A $7 billion universe gone. How does a studio spend that much and still hit reset? 7 mistakes. And 1 amplifier. Leadership whiplash. Every year or two, new bosses, new plans, same result. I've got the receipts, box office drops, the pivots, the exact moments it went sideways. Quick vote before we start. Stability or vision? Which would have saved this universe? Type it now, then watch me prove it. If you bounce in the first minute, you'll miss the 3 receipts that almost nobody sees in one place. The second weekend collapse that triggered the panic. The delta between 2 cuts of the same movie, and the leadership timeline that explains why every fix backfired. Give me the next few minutes. I'll keep the numbers on screen so the voiceover stays fast, and by the end you'll know exactly where the DCEU broke. From Man of Steel in 2013 to Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom in 2023, this universe spans 15 theatrical releases, huge peaks, rough valleys, and a hard stop before a new DCU begins. That's why this is the perfect autopsy. The book is closed, the data's complete. You'll see totals, openings, legs, critic versus audience splits, and the key reshoot moments pop on screen while I move. Mistake 1, rushing the universe. Marvel earned the team up with time. Solo arcs, trust built frame by frame, then payoff. DC sprinted Man of Steel straight into a crowded Batman v Superman that tried to be sequel, prequel, and launchpad all at once. In a few seconds, you'll see the Weekend 2 percentage that told the story. People debated the edit instead of the characters. Justice League arrived before enough introductions and asked a new villain to carry stakes the audience hadn't felt yet. That's not a pacing note. That's a skipped step. Loyalty takes time. When you skip the slow Bond moments, the biggest set pieces feel like trailers for a better movie that isn't there. Mistake 2, reactive studio meddling after the first sting of pain. Instead of tightening clarity, the mandate became lighten up now. Tone passes, joke passes, trailer house rhythms. Suicide Squad is the exhibit. One film was shot, another vibe was released. You don't need leaks to feel the stitches. You hear it when dialogue rhythms change scene to scene. You see it in needle drops that play like patches. You feel it when the third act pivots into a different genre. Then came the League handoff. 2 visions on 1 deadline. Watch the split when the numbers flash. Critic and audience pull apart, not because people hate heroes, but because they stop trusting the promise. Mistake 3, and this is the amplifier under everything else. Leadership whiplash. Johns and Berg trying to steady the ship after early turbulence. Walter Hamada attempting a reset of the reset. Corporate ownership shifts from AT&T to Warner Media to Warner Brothers Discovery. Finally, the Gun/Safran reboot plan. Every regime change reshuffled the slate, moved dates, killed projects, and reinvented priorities. You cannot architect 5-year character journeys on a 12-month decision cycle. The math is brutal. Instability multiplies every creative misstep, and even wins struggle to stack into momentum. Quick question while it's fresh. If leadership hadn't changed hands, which single film would have landed differently? And how? Post your take. I'm reading them, and I'll feature a few in the next upload. Mistake 4, a brand map nobody could recite. Is the Batman in the plan? Joker? Are these Elseworlds, soft reboots, or canon cousins? Meanwhile, the core universe is trying to grow, while the loudest conversation is about projects designed to be separate. Elseworlds can be a gift. They invite bold voices. But when the mainline identity is already shaky, parallel tracks blur the message. If your answer to "does this count?" is a paragraph, you've already lost the casual viewer. The rule should fit in 1 sentence people can repeat to each other. Mistake 5, release timing and positioning. Shazam! Fury of the Gods opened under a cloud of reboot headlines. Blue Beetle found itself between cultural juggernauts during a marketing lull. The Flash arrived after years of delays and off-screen controversy that swallowed any event feeling. The openings and legs you'll see on screen will look like a pattern. When the calendar fights you and the message isn't crystal, people treat your movie like optional homework. Mistake 6, the HBO Max pivot and window whiplash during and after the pandemic. Day and date taught a slice of the audience to wait. Once home soon feels like a default, you need extraordinary word of mouth to drag them back for opening night. Theaters sell urgency, community, spoilers, a shared laugh in the dark. Kill urgency and you kill legs. Some titles can outrun that with buzz, most can't. The DCEU rarely enjoyed buzz that stayed unbroken for long. Mistake 7. Tonal inconsistency. Operatic myth one quarter, breezy kid energy the next, then self-aware satire after that. Variety across a slate is fine, variety of brand promise is not. The MCU experiments too, but the baseline tone and rule set feel legible. The DCEU kept asking the audience to recalibrate expectations every few months. Curiosity showed up, consensus didn't. Let's make the thesis explicit before the midpoint so you don't miss it. All 7 mistakes are real, but the meta problem, the thing multiplying damage, is leadership instability. Consistency beats chaos. A franchise isn't just budgets and VFX, it's trust. If you keep changing the promise, even good movies can't pass momentum down the line. Now, the fast receipts pass, the 3 shots most people never see in one run. First, the second weekend slide on Batman v Superman that spooked the building. You'll see the percentage pop and you'll remember the discourse that followed. Not who are these people, what do they want, but what is this cut? What got trimmed? Why does it feel rushed? Second, the 2 cuts problem, a theatrical league that carried one tone and a later cut that proved a different tone and rhythm could work for a different audience. Whatever side you land on, the delta in scores is real. Third, the leadership timeline. New bosses, new plans, new definitions of fix. That churn produced short-term patches that couldn't rack up long-term wins. Here's where someone says, Marvel had problems too. True. The difference isn't perfection, it's continuity of trust. A single leadership voice can pivot without broadcasting panic. In this universe, the public narrative felt like a new manifesto. Every quarter promised reshoots as a cure. Another promised a multiverse reset. Another promised filmmaker first bets with smaller budgets. Any of those could work. None of them did because none of them lasted long enough to measure properly. If you click away now, you miss the scoreboard that compresses a decade of chaos into 3 rows, and it's the clearest picture you'll see all week. Here's the concrete scoreboard. 3 eras, 3 flagship outcomes, 1 through line. Early course correction era. A team-up arrives before the audience bonds. The second weekend trajectory matches mixed buzz. Trust fractures. Stabilization attempt era. Bright, charming winds appear. A family-forward adventure here. A maximalist ocean epic there. But sequels don't inherit momentum because the brand promise is still unclear. Cost-cutting and reboot prep era. Cancellations, tax write-offs, slate reshuffles, and titles launching under the shadow of a coming reset. Urgency evaporates because viewers assume a new map is around the corner. Change the sign on the door all you want. You don't rebuild trust with a memo. You rebuild it with consistency. Your turn for one line that matters. What's your single sentence rule for DC's brand identity going forward? Post it below. If it's sharp, I'll put it on screen next time. So, what do you do with a decade like this? You bottle the lessons. First, earn the team up. Emotional payoff is rented from shared history, not purchased with setup teasers. Second, fix with precision, not panic. If tone is the problem, adjust tone. Don't detonate the roadmap. Third, pick an identity and live in it long enough for people to feel it. Variety within the brand is great. Variety of brand is not. Fourth, treat windowing like a marketing lever. Scarcity creates urgency. Fills Fridays. Fifth, make the map legible. If something doesn't count, say it once and keep saying it the same way. What about the new blueprint? Gunn and Safran are starting with a simple idea: clarity. Chapter 1 lays out film, TV, animation, even games in one plan, with Superman as the load-bearing column. The smartest play is boring on purpose. Say the rules clearly, hold the line publicly, and stop chasing every weekend headline. If the first film overperforms, don't overpromise. If it underperforms, don't panic pivot. The only way to rebuild trust is to keep showing up with the same promise and deliver on it. Elseworlds still matter, in clearly labeled lanes. Joker and the Batman work because they're singular statements that don't pretend to plug into everything. Keep them distinct. Let the mainline DCU carry continuity, while side projects act as creative labs that never blur the map. Audiences are happy to jump between tones when they understand the rules. It's uncertainty, not variety, that drains enthusiasm. Thanks for sticking with the autopsy. If you learned something new, the next deep dive will be worth your time. A Scenecraft comparison of Justice League 2017 and Zack Snyder's Justice League. What changed in structure, humor rhythm, and how the score reshaped the emotional arc. If you skip it, you'll miss the 3 receipts editors never show side by side, a beat map of the final act, a tone meter, and a before and after legs chart. Subscribe if that sounds useful, and I'll see you in the next one. Before we close, 3 quick definitions so we're aligned. Legs is the multiplier from opening weekend to total domestic gross, a rough proxy for word of mouth. Windowing is how long a film stays theatrical only before rental or streaming. Elseworlds means deliberately separate, director-driven projects that aren't in the mainline continuity. Those terms show up repeatedly because they shape behavior. Legs reveal how people talk about a movie after hype fades. Windowing trains when they watch. Elseworlds frames how much a single entry matters. Let's zoom back into mistake 1 for a minute and make the cost tangible. Ask yourself, how many quiet scenes did we get to bond with these versions of Clark, Bruce, and Diana before asking them to carry a mythic clash? Not many. Awe comes from size, loyalty comes from time. A meal, a laugh, a bruise. Small choices that convert spectacle into stakes. Without that, the audience appreciates the visuals and waits to stream. Miss this insight, and you'll misread every underperformance as marketing instead of relationship. Mistake 2, the meddling, deserves a clean surgical line. Oversight is normal, clarity edits, trims, a well-placed beat. Identity surgery is not. When a finished film is recut to chase a new tone, the seams show. You can feel it without reading a single behind-the-scenes thread. Watch for the tonal zigzags, the joke cadence that changes mid-scene, the needle drop that solves nothing. If you're tempted to click away here, don't. The next 30 seconds link this to the audience critic spread you saw earlier and explain why trust fell faster than scores alone suggest. On-brand architecture, let's be fair. Elseworlds are catnip for talent. A director can make a statement without breaking continuity. That's a feature. The bug was messaging. Fans kept asking, is this canon? If your answer requires a flowchart, you've created friction at the front door. The winning move is a crisp rule that casual viewers can repeat. Miss this, and great side projects become the main story, while the main line feels optional. Timing and positioning are the unglamorous levers that decide everything. A hopeful crowd pleaser released into a cultural thunderstorm gets drowned out. Promise a universe pivot without scripting what survives the pivot, and viewers hesitate to invest. Marketing can counter-program many things, but it can't counter-program doubt. When people believe a story is heading nowhere, they treat the next movie like homework. Skip this lesson and your future slate will repeat the same Friday drop, Monday fade pattern. Windowing taught the hardest habit. Break the theatrical window loudly, and you don't just move a date. You teach a behavior. Some viewers will still rush out for a communal moment. Many more will quietly wait. Theaters can thrive alongside streaming, but only if novelty or community feels non-negotiable. When the brand promise wobbles, I'll catch it later, wins. If you miss this, you'll misdiagnose a demand problem when you really have an urgency problem. Let's deepen the scoreboard so the climax sticks. Era 1, early course correction, trying to flip from brooding myth to quippy workplace mid-edit. The measurable tells lineup, weekend drops, split scores, audience comments about tone. Era 2, attempted stabilization, isolated wins, but momentum leaks away because the promise keeps shifting. Era 3, cost-cutting and reboot prep. Announcements and cancellations teach viewers to wait for the next universe instead of embracing the current one. If you click off here, you'll miss the 3-line takeaway that turns this into a checklist any studio can use. Counter examples are the compass. Wonder Woman landed because its promise was simple, compassion as strength. Aquaman landed because its world felt new, textured, and worth visiting again. The Suicide Squad landed because it fully owned its tone and gave us Peacemaker to prove the voice had legs. None were accidents. They show the path back, clarity, consistency, and a pipeline that lets one win feed the next. You asked whether inviting questions helps. It does, when the question is specific and easy to answer. That's why you heard the binary prompt in the first 20 seconds, and why you'll hear 2 more right now. Was leadership the core issue, or was it vision? Which would you fix first? Rank your top 3 mistakes by impact and tell me why your number 1 beats the others. If you could reverse exactly one decision, which would it be and what chain reaction would change? Back to the runway. The next decade can look nothing like the last if the blueprint starts with clarity and ends with patience. Communicate the rules. Hold the line. Let wins stack into bigger wins. Chase headlines and wobble on windowing, and we'll be right back here. Great trailers, big weekends, short legs. I'm rooting for the first outcome, and we'll track it with the same receipts. One last nudge before you go. If you want the cut-for-cut comparison of Justice League 2017 versus Zack Snyder's Justice League, scene construction, humor rhythm, and how the score shifts the emotional arc, type compare in the comments. If you want the HBO Max windowing graph pack, type Windows. If you want the Elseworlds map case study, type Mappy. Your picks decide what drops next, and if you skip it, you'll miss the simplest checklist a studio can actually use tomorrow.